Perhaps we need some outside universal threat. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us?
Here's the thing, it's not our world.
None of this is real?
Nope.
So you're just passing
We don't
through.
matter. We don't matter.
Oh, wow.
There's the good news.
Oh!
Should I ask who you made the bargain with? with the chief commander. On this earth? And this earth, and then in a world we can't see.
A short flight from Las Vegas, deep in the Nevada desert, lies Area 51, the CIA's secret. A giant clandestine base that remained unacknowledged and disavowed by the U.S. government for almost 60 years. But in August of 2013, the CIA finally admits this place is real.
After about 6 weeks, my security clearance came through, and I got my CIA card. It was an ID card, like a credit card, where I could just go up to the door and slice it, walk right in. After about 6 weeks, my security clearance came through, and I got my CIA card. It was an ID card, like a credit card, where I could just go up to the door and slice it, walk right in. Project Blue Book, which was kind of partially a fraud.
You're saying some of the Blue Book cases were
Yes.
were completely fictitious?
Yes. But the cases that we got came from, I think it was Fort Belvoir, Maryland.
Fort Belvoir?
Yeah. And it didn't come from the Pentagon, or it didn't come from CIA headquarters. But we would get reports about a certain sighting that they had in Mexico or Italy or something like that. And then we had people that would follow through on it, that would go out and interview the people to see if they were nutcases or if it was real,
So they'd be going overseas frequently?
I wasn't, but I always stayed statewide. But the people we had working with us from the CIA would do that. We would get like a new report probably a couple times a week. I was coming into the Army fresh off the farm, so I really didn't have much knowledge of anything, but my boss filled me in on Project Blue Book and what they had found so far, as far as grays and aliens and the Roswell incident.
How did you feel when this first got dumped on you? When you first learned about this?
I was just kind of overwhelmed with all of this, And I said to him, I don't know if I'm going to be able to be a judge of this type of thing. What's real, what's not, when I don't have much knowledge of it, So...
What did he say?
He said, well, we have to build the information as we go, and you'll see how this thing is working out.
And then the other thing is, of course, you really weren't able to tell family or close friends, obviously.
No, I couldn't tell anybody. In fact, I had to take a vow that I wouldn't tell anybody. A lot of it for 40 years, and more of it for 50 years, which is up in 2010.
You're doing all this crypto work, you're looking at images, photographs, video. It's 1958, maybe the fall of 58. What happened after this?
At that time, the Project Blue Book thing kind of went pot, If you remember, back in those days, they kind of declared it as a nothing,
Right.
And
They were telling the world all UFOs are misidentifications, hoaxes,
Balloons.
Psychological issues, whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
So my boss came to me and he says, we've both got a new assignment. And he says, oh, I said, where are we going? Oh, he says, we're going to the Capitol. We're going to be part of the Eisenhower push. He's trying to find out something about, all about these aliens that MJ-12 was supposed to find out, but never sent back reports to him.
The MJ-12, the UFO control group, were they calling it MJ-12 at that time? Yes.
They called us in, went into the Oval Office, and President Eisenhower was there and Nixon, and they said, we called the people in from MJ-12 from Area 51 and S4, but they told us that the government had no jurisdiction over what they were doing. So being a general, past general, you didn't tell them to go to hell without any real good reason, you know. Mm-hmm. So he said, I want you and your boss to fly out there. I want you to give them a personal message. And he says, I want you to tell them, whoever is in charge, tell them that to get in, they have this week, coming week, to get into Washington and to report to me. And if they don't, I'm going to get the First Army from Colorado and we're going to go over, we're going to take the base over. I don't care what kind of classified material you got. We're going to rip this thing apart.
Eisenhower was going to invade
Area 51. Yeah, with the First Army.
So you go out with your superior.
Yes.
You fly out. You land. What happens? Can you describe this whole process? What you saw?
It took us the 13 or 15 miles south to S4. Had like different garage door openings. Okay. And in these garage door openings, they had like different saucer crafts. The very first one had the Roswell craft in. It was kind of crashed up, but apparently every alien that was in it died except for a couple.
So you see the Roswell craft, and what are some of the others that you see?
Well, the Roswell craft was really strange because it looked like real heavy aluminum foil. We could rock next to it, and you could rock it. The whole thing probably weighed 150, 300 pounds.
Could they tell what the source of power was of this craft?
Yeah, it was like a reverse gravitational thing of some kind. In fact, one later on, I got the mathematical code for reversing gravity in a 3x5 card. I guess there are different types of grays and so on.
How did you see that evidence?
Well, at the later on at S4, we viewed the autopsy film, and then the colonel said, what we've got in here is we're interviewing a gray alien.
All right, right there. How did you feel at that moment?
Well, I thought, boy, we had no idea we were going to see the real thing. All we saw was film.
You had to have a little bit of heart racing at that moment.
My boss was able to go in and had like a partial interview with him.
So what did this gray alien look like? Could you describe him a little bit?
This one looked a little bit oriental.
So I'm just wondering if it looked almost human, what about this didn't look human?
No, it didn't look human as far as the skin tone and basically the shape of it and the size.
How was its head size compared with a normal human, for example?
Brain was kind of a little bit bigger. And some of the nose was very, very small. And the ears were just like holes. Mouth was very small.
Now, why were they bringing you out here at all, anyway, to see an alien? What was the point?
To go back and tell the president they actually had one.
So he did not know at this point
No,
if there was an alien at S4.
no.
What did you do then at Area? Were you done, or did you have other things to do at
Yeah,
S4?
so basically we were kind of done, went back to Area 51. They took us into the main building, and there we saw a U-2, which of course we didn't know existed. And a model of the SR-71.
Yeah, the Blackbird.
So, but like I mentioned earlier, it was not a model of the current Blackbird.
It was an earlier version.
But an early version.
Did you go directly to Washington after this?
Yes.
Or did you go somewhere else? How did they get, did you fly
We
regular airline?
flew-
Or
We flew back to the commuter plane back to the air base, and then took President Eisenhower's Lockheed Electra back to Washington.
you and your supervisor,
Yeah.
superior officer, and now you're meeting with the president?
Yes.
Can you describe this?
Well, we met with him in, the second story of the old OSS warehouse building. And Eisenhower and Nixon were there, and also Hoover was there. So he asked us what was going on, and we told him about the alien and the whole situation, and the black projects and so on, and he was just totally shocked. He appeared for the first time to be worried, you know, like he was worried.
I would think that Eisenhower would, I mean, he certainly knew that flying saucers were real.
Yes.
He knew that there were aliens. So I guess I'm just wondering, what would he have been, really surprised about?
Surprised about the black programs. Eisenhower said, gotta keep this thing completely secret. You know, can't talk about this.
Your actual name is, the name you grew up with, that was a different name than what you
Yes.
had in the...
I never used it in the CIA at all.
Now, what about today? You're going on the public record, and this is still sensitive information, even though earlier you talked about, security oaths that maybe expire after a certain period of
50
time,
years.
but you're still concerned.
Linda Moulton Howell's phone call, her phone was tapped, and they got my phone number, and through the telephone company, they're able to find me, and so on.
When they found you, what happened?
I was going to a grocery store. Two guys in a black suits come out of a black Lincoln town car and came over to see me. And they told me that I'd better not publish anything or talk to Linda about any more things. So at that time, I did, I stopped.
This video is going to really bring people to a new level of truth. This world is absolutely not even close to what we think it is. We're going to look at Area 51, and more importantly, S4, which is being hidden by Area 51, in that people are under the belief that Area 51 is about military technology, aircraft, things of that nature, possibly even the development of spaceships. No. Now, S4 is much deeper than that. We are talking about something that most people won't be able to wrap their heads around. I know there's Christians that will, and then there'll be Christians that as well won't be able to understand this. But there is no such thing as aliens. Absolutely not. There are absolutely no aliens in this world. However, there are fallen angels, demons, and they are passing demons and fallen angels off as aliens in order to deceive for many, many reasons. Obviously, they want to hide scripture. They don't want to, expose the truth. And of course, Satan and the demons don't want to be exposed. So, of course, they're hiding that. But with that, they can also pretend that we're on a spinning wet ball rocket, and they can, pretend a lot of things as long as you believe there's outer space and creatures out there that want to be our friends. E.T. in the movie does not exist any more than Gazoo on the Flintstones. We are being greatly deceived, to make no mistake about it, and it's time for people to wake up. It seriously is time for people to figure out exactly what's going on. And we're going to go ahead and do that here today. Enjoy the video.
Everyone out there, my name is C. Ronald Garner. I'm a 30-year researcher in UFOs. I have spent a lifetime studying the subject. I think I have more knowledge of it than most of the sophisticated researchers out there. I'm about to give Bob Wood and Jan Harzan some documents that have never before been seen by the general public. I'm hoping that they'll be published in the MUFON Journal so that people out there will know what's going on behind the scenes. For whatever reason, I've been privileged and honored to talk to a half a dozen people that are within the secret government. I know their names, I know where they are. Many of them are recognizable by the general public, but I'm going to give these documents today on January the 23rd, 2015 to Bob Wood and Jan Harzan so they can be published in the MUFON Journal. I just want to make one statement why I'm wearing this angel cap. It's a code image for people in the secret program. Those of you out there who know its meaning, you know its meaning. A little bit of background about myself. When I was a teenager, a neighbor gave me a book called Flying Saucers Have Landed by George Adamski. And that just took my interest, and I was fascinated up till this day. When I was 18 years old, I married a woman who was a trance medium. And she brought through people then that I didn't know, but I subsequently, my later years, realized that they were entities from other star systems because she spoke different languages. She was different syntax, totally different person. That was a major experience when I was married to her for 10 years. She was an astrologer for major Hollywood people. So I became an astrologer, her assistant, making charts and so forth. And she was doing these readings. Another major turning event was in 1983. I was working for a mortgage company in Beverly Hills, and the woman manager and I went to lunch one day, and she said that her brother worked at Area 51. I said, "Oh, really? I'd sure like to talk to him." And she said, "Well, I'll try and set it up, but he's a little funny about talking to anybody." There was a white van circling his cul-de-sac, so he was afraid he was being monitored and he would never agree to being interviewed. But what I just said was direct from his sister. Well, she'd had no reason to lie to me or to play games anyway. was just a casual lunch conversation. So then, and I go to Vegas a lot. I have some European friends there. And in '89, when Bob Lazar came on CBS talking about Area 51 S4, that really got my attention with George Knapp. And so there was another confirmation of Area 51 S4, totally separated. Then in '93, I was attending International UFO Congress in Las Vegas, and the speaker there that I was entranced with was Bill Uhouse. Now, Bill Uhouse was an engineer, and he was tasked by the Air Force after he got out of the Marines. He was a pilot for the Marines in World War II, to go to work at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And he went to work there working on back engineering special projects. So then they transferred him to Los Alamos, and they transferred him also to Area 51 S4. And he said on camera that at Los Alamos, Edward Teller was there with two beings from a different star system, the blonde, blue-eyed variety, what we call the Nordics in ufology. And they were teaching Edward Teller about this science of whatever from their star system. That's profound. And I have it in some of my videos of Bill Uhouse stating that. So this is the main part that I see as the people, researchers, don't get. Or to go to work at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And he went to work there working on back engineering special projects. So then they transferred him to Los Alamos, and they transferred him also to Area 51 S4. And he said on camera that at Los Alamos, Edward Teller was there with two beings from a different star system, the blonde, blue-eyed variety, what we call the Nordics in ufology. And they were teaching Edward Teller about this science of whatever from their star system. That's profound. And I have it in some of my videos of Bill Uhouse stating that. So this is the main part that I see as the people, researchers, don't get. We're on regular, everyday conversations with these beings from other star systems at the Los Alamos for sure, and Area 51 S4, and probably Dugway grounds and Brookhaven and wherever. They're coming and going. Either they can manifest and disappear, or they come physically,
Be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Wherefore take unto you the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all to stand. Stand therefore, having your loins girt about with truth.
Richard Dolan calls it the breakaway civilization. I call it an ET fifth column. Now, if you just get that concept in your mind, that we are being influenced in our finances, in our wars, in all of these various things by people not from this star system. And that's what needs to be researched. And in my books and videos, I touch on it in various ways. So I'm hoping that this interview will spark other in-depth researchers out there to pursue this line of thinking. And I can give some hints here along the way. I'm going to be doing that in a few minutes, of where to look and who to ask. So that leads me into information that I'm going to hand to Jan Harzan right now. This is a compilation of the current members of Majestic. It's on my website and it's in my book, but I just want people to know that I'm handing this to him. We'll talk more about that later. Now, the other thing that I need to bring out early in this interview is that the Europeans have their equivalent of Majestic 12. It's called the Committee of the Majority. And I have all their names right here in my hand. Now, some of the Majestic people in this country are on the same list that I'm going to be handing Jan Harzan. These need to be published in the MUFON Journal because for some reason, I don't know why this is, but there seems to be more intense research in Europe than the United States. And that's because the secret government doesn't have as much control. That's my opinion. Exactly. Yeah. And this email was sent to me by one of my insiders. I'm going to hand this to Jan. He can see the date on it. It was January the 27th, 2005. And the handle for my contact, he calls himself Nobody Nobody. And at that time in 2005, he was in England. I don't know where he is now. I've lost touch with some of my contacts due to my illness. Now, at this point, I'm going to name several of the current members of Majestic. I think that people out there will be surprised, but they are the current members. The number one member is J. Michael McConnell. He was Director of National Intelligence for former President Bush. When Bush left office, Admiral McConnell left also. I have him on video number 3 on my website when McConnell was being interviewed by Tim Russert on Meet the Press. And I have a voiceover that explains that McConnell is the soul of Majestic. He's a moral compass of Majestic. He tries to keep them in line, the other 11 members. He doesn't always do a great job, but he tries. He's an honest person. The other people on this that I'm going to name right now are not the greatest. Number 2 in Majestic is Vice President Dick Cheney. Cheney knows all about this. He was at Area 51S4 when Dr. Burish was taking tissue samples from the J-Rod and was there at various other times. He actually has his own one-bedroom apartment. All 12 members of Majestic have their own one-bedroom apartment. I have diagrams of that apartment. It's a step-down living quarters, and they have closed circuit everything naturally. And when you're in that facility, I want to give this aside. This is something nobody knows. When you're in the facility, there are armed guards every direction. You can't, when you're in that facility, you can't look down any hallway, any corridor, anything without seeing an armed guard. And that intimidates the people that are working there. You're not about to do something that would be untoward if that is facing you. And the other thing that a lot of UFO researchers don't know is the guards in Area 51S4 are Navy SEALs. The guards on the outside are Wackenhut, the perimeter, but they're not on the inside. And in my video, I believe it's video number 2 at area51thetruth.com, endorsements it's a tab at the top. It's endorsements by various people of the Dan Burry story. We'll get into that in a minute. But John Learjet fame, tells about when Dan Burrish, microbiologist, Department of Defense microbiologist at Area 51S4, tells on my video that when he saw the changing of the guard, when the Navy SEALs changed the guard, it's like the tomb of the unknown. Very professional, just spick and polished, just dynamite, just fantastic. And Dan Burry says on my camera that they knew, that he knew, if he stepped over that red line, they would shoot him. Now, this is a very valuable asset, specially trained microbiologists, but they would shoot him if he stepped over. That's how serious all this is. So the ability that I have had to interact with these people like Bill Uhouse, and later on I interviewed Bill Uhouse's son, Will Uhouse, on camera with Burrish, and he confirms everything that Dan Burry said as far as the looking glass and so forth. His father told him the same thing. And we can get into the looking glass a little more. That's a device whereby the secret government can see the past or the future. Not exactly, but approximately. And it can also act as a teleportation device. If it's angled at a 90-degree angle, it can be used and has been used as a teleportation device. Now, I have some schematics of that. I'm not a scientist, so I don't know how it works, but it has special gases, argon, krypton, different things, and with lasers. And I have 3D drawings that Michael Schratt did of this, which is another quick story I need to explain. I have Dan explaining it and on one of my videos, and it's done just on a blackboard, but I wanted something more in depth. Michael Schratt is a 3D artist and fantastic. I also had Mark McCandless do a lot of work for me because these guys are top artists in their field. So Michael Schratt did these 3D drawings of the looking glass and the clean sphere. The clean sphere is a half dome where the atmosphere is controlled. Nitrogen, oxygen, just like we have, but it has 5% hydrogen because this being from another star system requires that. He's from the Zeta Reticuli star system. For some strange reason, here again, synchronicity, the Dan Burry story and the anonymous story, which we talk about a little later, have been somewhat sanctioned. Not so much the anonymous story, but the Dan Burry story is sanctioned by the secret government. So Dr. Dan Burrish, microbiologist, Department of Defense, is a poster boy for disclosure. And I'm the media person that's supposed to make it happen. I thought this would happen 5 years ago. I want to address this quickly, though. I don't know for sure, but 5 years ago, I was finishing up my book on Dan Burrish, and I had a camera crew coming from Hollywood to interview Dr. Burrish 5 years ago, and I had arranged for him to meet with these people. We had police escorts. We had the whole 9 yards. They were shooting another reality show, and the producer was a friend, so he was going to do the Dan Burry story. But when I set it up with Dan Burrish's mother, Doreen Crane, she got upset because I was going to have her second instead of first. So she told Dan that I had treated her disrespectfully, so therefore she wouldn't go on camera and he wouldn't either. At the time, I was really angry about it. I spent a lot of time and money setting all this up. But now I'm glad, because what happened was that I started to put my attention on the anonymous story, which I had started in 1996. And it was an extremely important story. But, and I don't throw this out as true, but it's strange that my first bladder cancer came about at the same time, within a couple weeks of my transferring from the Burrish story to the anonymous story. I can't prove it, don't know, but former Congressman Schiff, Sherry Adamek, Stephen Greer's assistant, they both had quick active cancers. Don't know, but it's in the literature. I can name 25 or more people that have died strange deaths. Now, why is this? Why is the secret government murdering people? The first one, which we can talk about in some depth, is the first Secretary of Defense, James Forrestal. Now, he's thrown out of the window at Bethesda Naval Hospital. I mean, nobody believes the suicide story, that there was some kind of a belt wrapped around the radiator and tried to hang him. The whole thing is totally crazy. But Anonymous says that he saw in the CIA files at Langley that on the windowsill was scratch marks where Forrestal was trying to hang on. He didn't try to kill himself. Now, what could there be in all of this lore and literature that for over 60 years, they've been murdering people? And this is directly from Anonymous and from the CIA files. So what I think that is, and this needs to be pursued big time, is that Anonymous says, and I know this will rock the world, but the Allied powers won the low-tech war. They lost the high-tech war. What does that mean? That means that Hitler and his cohorts had back-engineered craft in the 30s. There's a book, which I don't remember the name, History Channel had it on there, where there was a UFO landed in the Black Forest. And then, according to Anonymous, back to channelers, the Germans had these channelers. They were channeling these people, blonde Nordics, probably from the Pleiades, and that they were teaching the German scientists how to build anti-gravity machines. And I know this is controversial. When I brought it up at different meetings, people said, oh no, they didn't do that. UFOs and Nazis, come on. But if you just think logically, Hitler was a half-baked painter. He was a corporal in the army. The guy was a nothing. How could he be inspired to do what he did? Well, I lived for 10 years with a channeler, and I tell you, when you hear these beings coming from another star, from some other dimension, talking to you, it's impressive. And so my humble, informed opinion is that Hitler was talking to these people. It's documented that he had a huge library of occult literature. Now, I have it from several sources that Rockefeller paid a lot of money to the historians not to put this in the history books. So if we can get this story out, all the history books have to be rewritten. Mm-hmm. So let's fast forward to 96. In 96, I was working for a publishing company in San Diego, and I went to lunch with one of my fellow employees, and he told me at lunch that his father-in-law had worked at Area 51, and been a cryptographer for the Army. And he had also been recruited by the CIA. So I said, boy, we got to talk to him. But he didn't want to talk. This is in '96. But I realized that this was too important and that his life was threatened, his family was threatened. Back to the same thing. They're threatening people. We'll get into why I think it's happening. I think I have the Rosetta Stone of this subject. And the son-in-law of my friend, I have in the book a code name for him, but he said that he would work with me, and so I called Linda Moulton Howe. She was in Philadelphia at the time, and she went to who I'm now calling Anonymous. She calls him Cooper, Stein. He has many different code names. And went and stayed at his home for 3 days and audio taped him. There's 11 90-minute tapes that she taped of him, and she put it up on her site. And so, and that's the last time, because Anonymous asked her for her not to contact him anymore, ever again, after, I think it was June of '96. So she actually went on Coast to Coast and played some of that audio with Art Bell. I think it's archived. And Art Bell is blown away. He's saying, Linda, this is the biggest story ever. But I pursued this for over 15 years with the family. And in 2010, his final secrecy oath expired. So I was at lunch with the family, Christmas lunch, in 2010, and they said, finally, you can go public with it. So in 2010 till today, I put together this book, and it's just called Anonymous. And it's basically Linda Moulton Howe's interview, but I went through every page of it and made certain changes with Anonymous that he demanded be changed. That's a long story why that is, but he wrote out his memoirs. I have his handwritten memoirs. He doesn't own a computer. He's not into anything technical that way. He's good at cryptography, but that's another story. So that's what the book is, annotated and enhanced by my working with his family. It's an absolutely true story. My book right now, which is #1 on Amazon, Alien Disclosure at Area 51, I have, in the appendix, I've added the current members of Majestic. So I've named 2 of them, Admiral McConnell and Dick Cheney. I'll name a 3rd one, Greenspan. Now, naturally everybody says, how do you know it's Greenspan? I'll just give you a little vignette of something that I learned along the way. The people in the Black Ops, I mean, they gossip. You know, people in the Secret Service gossip about Bill Clinton, what he's doing. I mean, that's what they do. You know, they're just people talking about things. And so back, I don't know, it was 6 or 7 years ago, Greenspan, in case you don't know it, is married to Andrea Mitchell, NBC, about 20-some years his junior. So Dan Burrish was telling me that the people in the Black Ops were kidding around about that Greenspan and his wife were in the hot tub and he threw his back out. Now that's just me talking to somebody in the black world. Then on TV the next day I see Greenspan in a wheelchair. Now, that's just a little vignette. But I've told Linda Moulton Howe, I told Stanton Friedman, go try and talk to McConnell. Nobody will do it because everybody has their books, their videos, whatever their shtick is, they want to promote that. they don't, I'm hoping that this will open the door to some other people. Now, the other one that you need to know about is about Henry Kissinger. Henry Kissinger knows all about this. He has his own, all of these people on Majestic have their own apartments, one-bedroom apartments at Area 51 S4. I have drawings of it. And so if there was a full court press by some serious journalists, then somebody is going to crack the code. And I think the one that's most logical is Admiral McConnell, because someone told me that someone had asked him about Dr. Dan Burrish if he knew him, and he just smiled and walked away. So that's neither confirmed nor denied. That to me is an admission. McConnell felt that Dr. Dan Burrish, and I've seen his IQ. He has 199 IQ. I've seen it by the top Army psychiatrist. Now, Kissinger, I think, is about 90-some years old, 92 or whatever. Well, part of this whole program, which we can get into, depending on how much time and so forth, at Area 51 S4 is genetic manipulation, both on the extraterrestrial and on humans. Now, I surmise, in my humble, informed opinion, that Kissinger has been enhanced. I mean, we know about hybrids, we know different things. Wouldn't surprise me one bit if he lives to be 100 and something. Kissinger, his background, but I need to explain something. When Anonymous was at Area 51 S4, Eisenhower and Vice President Nixon sent Anonymous and his boss, I call him Jeffrey Wright, code name, to Area 51 to find out what's going on there. So that's what he did. He flew there on Air Force One in 1958, and there was a Air Force colonel there who had to be CIA. John Lear told me there's no just straight Air Force there. They're all CIA. They may wear whatever uniform they want. And by the way, Anonymous says on my camera that the CIA has a card. They can enter any building in the government. Swish that card. They can go into Fort Knox.
After about 6 weeks, my security clearance came through, and I got my CIA card. It was an ID card, like a credit card, where I could just go up to the door and slice it, walk right in.
Anonymous and his boss talked to this Air Force colonel and says to the colonel, the President of the United States wants to know who runs this place. And the Air Force colonel, codenamed Jim, had a little tag on his shirt, Jim. Nobody uses a real name. That's one of the main reasons Anonymous is alive, because he used different names. But that's another long story. So Air Force Colonel Jim says, well, I guess I am. But the real people, now get this, ladies and gentlemen, that run this place right now are at the Bohemian Grove. Now, what does that tell you? All the big high mucky mucks have this ritual every year. Kissinger there, all the big shots. Doing what? Paying homage to an owl. In the Black Ops world, there's a whole esoteric group of people that are talking to channelers, that are out there conjuring all kinds of spirits. And it's an active part of what the Black Ops do. What do they do all day? They talk to spirits, they start wars, stop wars, do things with the economy, all for some original goal. And this is where we get to what I'm calling the Rosetta Stone of ufology. Why is it that literally hundreds of people have been tortured, murdered, or disastrous things happen to them? What could be behind this? 1949, James Forrestal, the first Secretary of Defense. This is 49. This is, 2 years after Roswell. What could have been known 2 years after Roswell to take him out? Well, what I think is that there is a secret government. Richard Dolan calls it the breakaway. I call it a fifth column. Why do I call it that? Because what Dan Burish says to me on camera, it's in my videos, that the J-Rod person, the being that was at Area 51 S4 for over 50 years, was called the ambassador. So, as kind of a joke, I called them names too. They called him Stumpy and Bright Eyes, making fun of this being from another star system. So if he's telling our secret government all of these secrets, then there's some kind of communication with these other dimensions. And Dan Burish, being such an intelligence person, was tuned in to this J-Rod person because the J-Rod was on a ship that Dan Burish was abducted into when he was 9 years old at Mayberry Park in Lakewood, California. So they had a communication going on. And part of what Dan Burish's job was to take tissue samples from this being because he was suffering from a neuropathy disease. And Dan Burish, microbiologist, would take the tissue samples with a special gun, send it up to the biologists, the cultural people upstairs, change the genome, send it back down through a special tube so there wouldn't be any contamination, reinsert it into the J-Rod. And they didn't cure the neuropathy disease, but they did improve it. And it's interesting that Bob Wood is sitting in front of me right now because he's written a great book called Alien Viruses. Now, why is it, one of the reasons that the Black Ops have kept this a secret all these years is because some of these beings are toxic. If you handle or get near them, you can die. Now, these Black Ops can't come to the general public and say, well, sorry, folks, some of these people are dangerous. And when I've given a few talks, I mentioned your book. In fact, I have it in one of my videos, Bob. And I mentioned that Dr. Roger Lear and I went to Virginia, and there was this creature down there. There was 4 of them that were captured by the local firemen, then turned over to the Army. And those creatures are big eyes, protuberances on the head, sort of a reddish complexion. And so Roger Lear and I went down there in the mid-90s to try and interview this orthopedic surgeon that had operated on this being. The being in Varginha, Brazil, and John Mack went down there also earlier than Roger Lear and talked to the 2 girls that saw the being, talked to the girl's mother, interviewed him. And I've talked to Danny Sheehan, who's close to the family, and has said that he thinks that he can get us footage. So anyway, what the plan was with Roger Lear and I, when we went to Brazil, we had a really good time down there. The people in Brazil are just wonderful. Was to interview this orthopedic surgeon that had operated on this being. Because a year before, Dr. Roger Lear had gone down there on his own with A.J. Gavard to translate, and he interviewed this orthopedic surgeon. What he said was, A.J. Gavard set up this meeting with the orthopedic surgeon, and this is basically what the orthopedic surgeon told him, is that one early morning, about 2 or 3 o'clock, he was called into the hospital, and he didn't know why, but he came into the hospital operating room, and here was this creature on the operating table with a compound fracture, and we don't know which leg it was, but there was a military group outside. There's military people inside the door, outside the door, and there was this Brazilian general that told the orthopedic surgeon, get in there and fix it. And that's what military people would say. Just fix it. And the guy's got a broken leg, just fix it. So the orthopedic surgeon approached this being and put a splint on it and did whatever he had to do. And there's like a green mist that just filled the room. And in one day, it was totally healed. And the being telepathically told the orthopedic surgeon that in their world, they heal with their mental powers. They don't need intervention by